Hello dear students and welcome back to our online classes. This is our first lesson in history. For history, we reach chapter 3, Ancient Rome, and this lesson is the first lesson of chapter 3, the beginnings of ancient Rome. The pages of this lesson are from 34 to 35 in your Oxford International Primary History book. Without further ado, let's start the lesson. Our learning objective is to learn who were the ancient Romans and then how was the Roman Republic government? How did they rule? How was their government? The words that are going to come up in this lesson are a republic, citizen, elect, founded, patrician, peninsula, plebeian, and senate. So, the beginning of ancient Rome, this lesson has four main titles. The founding of Rome, a Roman kingdom, who were the people of Rome, how was the Roman Republic governed, and then under the last title, how was the Roman Republic governed, we have three other subtitles: magistrate and consuls, senators, and tribunes and assembles. Now, let's read the first paragraph, the first title we have. The Romans were one tribe of people who lived on the Italian peninsula. They decided to live together and establish a city. No one is really sure when this happened, but it is traditional to say that the city of Rome was founded in 753 BCE or before Common Era. Okay. Based on what we've read, let's see who were the ancient Romans. So the ancient Romans were one tribe of people who lived on the Italian peninsula. They decided to live together and establish a city. When was the city of Rome was founded? As we read, nobody is sure when exactly, but it's traditional to say that it was founded in 753 before Common Era. So, peninsula is a piece of land that is almost completely surrounded by water. Founded means established, begun, or just starting to build something. Let's move on to the second paragraph. A Roman kingdom. To begin with, the Romans were ruled by kings from Etruscan tribe, who lived in lands nearby. In 509 BCE, or before Common Era, the Romans rebelled against these kings. Rome became a republic. Instead of having one ruler, the people started to elect their leaders. Who ruled the Romans in the beginning? So, in the beginning, the Romans were ruled by kings from a tribe that were called Etruscan tribe, who lived in the lands nearby. But in 509 BCE, before Common Era, the Romans rebelled against these kings and Rome became a republic country, a country with a republic government. Instead of having one ruler, the people started to elect their leaders. Now let's see, what do we mean by republic and elect? Republic is a form of government in which the people elect their leaders, and the leaders are responsible for the people. Elect is to choose someone by voting for a position in the government. So people gathered around and voted, and the person who had the highest number of votes were chosen for that position in government. Now let's move on to who were the people of Rome. Men and women who were not slaves in the Roman Republic were citizens. Citizens were divided into two groups. Patricians came from wealthy families and owned land and property. Common people were called plebeians or plebs. Slaves were also part of Roman society. They could not be citizens and had no power. Based on what we've read, let's see how was the Roman society. Now, Obviously, the people in the Roman society were not equal. They were either citizens or slaves. Who is a citizen in the Roman society? Citizen is a person who has a certain rights and responsibilities because they live in a state or a country. Now, how were the social classes of these citizens in ancient Rome? Were they all the same? Were they treated equally? Or they had different social classes? Well, first we have patricians. Patricians were at the top of Roman society. They were the ruling classes. They owned lands and property. So patricians were very, very wealthy, were on top of Roman society, and they ruled Rome. Next, we have plebeians. Plebeians were common people. They were working classes. They generally lived in a very crowded and basic apartments, though they were not as wealthy. Now that we've talked about citizens, we are talking about the other class that were not citizens, the slaves. How was the situation of slaves in ancient Rome? Slaves were bought and sold at the slave market. Their individual prices depended on their skills and talents. For example, a slave that could cook could become more expensive than the one that couldn't. So the slaves didn't have any human right, any basic right for themselves. They were not in control even of their own lives and decisions. So they could not be citizens and they had zero power over anything at all. Based on what we've learned so far, let me see if you can answer these questions in your notebooks. Now, first, who were the citizens in the Roman society? Second, how were the social classes of the citizens in ancient Rome? Who were the patricians and who were the plebeians? How was the situation of slaves in ancient Rome? Pause the video, write these questions with their answers. Let me see if you can do it without looking at your books or going back to the previous slides. Welcome back to the video. Now let's move on to reading how was the Roman Republic governed. This section is on both page 34 and 35. How was the Roman Republic governed? A government is a group of people who make the rules for a city or a country. The government of the Roman Republic had three main parts: magistrates and consuls. Magistrates were leaders elected by the people. Every 2 years, the magistrates were elected to become consuls. The two consuls were in charge of Rome for 1 year. One consul led the government and the other was responsible for the army. Going to page 35, senators. The senators formed a group called the Senate. Senators advised the consuls and approved or rejected laws. Senators decided how to spend public money and advised on Rome's relationships with other countries. The tribunes were a group of citizens who represented the common people of Rome, the plebeians, within the government. The assemblies were made of plebeians. The assemblies elected officials such as tribunes and voted on laws. Okay, what is government? A government is a group of people who make the rules for a city or a country. How was the government of the Roman Republic? The government of the Roman Republic had three main parts: magistrates and consuls, senates, and tribunes and assemblies. Now let's take a close look on each part of the government individually. First, the magistrates and consuls. The magistrates and consuls, they were leaders elected by people. Consuls were magistrates that have been elected to rule Rome every 2 years. Every 2 years, two consuls were elected and they ruled for 1 year. Now, one consul was responsible for government and the other for the army. Senators. Now, Senate was a group of senators, and senators were people who advised the consul in the Roman Republic. And they did a couple of things. One, rejected or approved laws, decided how to spend money, and then advised on Rome's relationship with other countries. This was their job. Tribunes and assemblies. Tribunes were a group of people who represented the common people, the plebeians, inside the government. So the assemblies were made of plebeians. The assemblies elected officials such as tribunes and voted on laws. Okay, now let me see if you can answer these questions without looking at your books or going back to the video. The questions are: what is government? What are the three main parts of a Roman government? Who are the magistrates? Who are the consuls? How did they rule? Who are the tribunes? Who are the assemblies? What did the assemblies do? After writing the answers for these questions, we came to the end of our lesson. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. Please ask if you have any questions in the comments, and see you next lesson.